Hi everyone, it's Sue here, and I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes about one of the resources that you'll find in this week's readings. It is something for Canada to be very proud of. The Teamstepps Pocket Guide is a quick resource related to the Teamstepps project initiated through patient safety in Canada. And so Teamstepps stands for Team Strategies and Tools to Enhance Performance and Patient Safety. I'm going to run through this a little bit. You can easily read the pocket guide. You're also going to find uploaded in this week a link to the Teamstepps materials on the web. I would really recommend that for each of the various components, you'll see links that give you short videos and other resources to really see how Teamstepps can be used effectively in a variety of patient situations. It is moving across the country at great speed. So I bet many of you who are bridgers are using this in your workplace already. And many of you who are collaborative students may see this in your practicum sites. So I'm just going to scan this document. You're going to have the PDF of the pocket guide loaded to the web, but let's see what it talks about. So here are the things that the Teamstepps really focuses on. We'll talk about the principles in a second. But it looks at the team structure and how team structure works. It looks at communication. We've talked about that already, but now this is an opportunity as we get to the end of the course to really look at getting down to bare bones, not just the theory of communication, but what are the tools that we're using for communication, leadership, and again, not just the theory of how leadership works, but let's bring it right back down to things like checklists that may be helpful. Situation monitoring, so important that we are able to assess the environment while we're in it, not in retrospect, but while we're in it. And that process is critical for patient safety. And it's really critical because we are responsible for ourselves, but we're also responsible for the team. We are an active member of that team, looking at how mutual support happens within an interprofessional team. And so important, some really excellent communication strategies around asserting yourself and challenging, particularly that 2-challenge rule and using your cuss words, absolutely, I think, gems. And then there's some tools at the end that you can look at. So here is the structure that the Teamstepps project has come up with as they look at competency and outcomes, right? So team competency outcomes, and this week we're talking about outcomes. They look at knowledge, attitudes, and performance. So you see those at the outer edges of the triangle. And within the core of the triangle, we see those 4 components: leadership, situation monitoring, mutual support, and communication. And those are seen as really critical skills. And here we go. I'm going to move down. You're going to read all of this. I don't need to read this to you. Here's some key principles. And I think I'm just going to go over those quickly, understanding that it's essential that we identify who our team is and that we work together effectively, because we cannot have safe practice if we are not working together effectively in interprofessional teams. Communication, one of the critical points that Teamstepps makes is that communication is structured. So it's not just sort of lackadaisical or casual, but it's a structure in which we embed information, and we convey that information, we exchange that information in a very clear and accurate manner. And there are some techniques that we can do that we can share, right? So if we all communicate in specific ways, then we're familiar with that process. Leadership is so critical, and we talked about that in this course, right? And it's important that that for teams to be effective, we have a leader that we can buy into, but that we don't always have the same leader. So who the leader is and how that leader functions really impacts how the team works, how information is shared, and really ensuring that all team members have the information they need, the resources they need to be successful. Now, situation monitoring is so important. This comes right down to that patient safety agenda. And in situation monitoring, the focus really is that all of us have the responsibility to actively engage in surveying, monitoring, watching, scanning, and assessing all that is happening around us. And through that process, it's an analytical process where we are able to maintain that level of awareness to support how the team is functioning in the moment. Now, some of that functioning might be interpersonal, interprofessional functioning. Some of that functioning might be in the midst of a very chaotic appearing code situation where we actually have to say, it doesn't appear that the leader is consistently the person who is directing this. So who is the leader? Things like that. So you are involved in situation monitoring in a range of activities. And it's not something that you say, okay, now I'm going to monitor the situation because something is really critically happening, but I'm not going to at other times. We are always involved in that process. And then finally, mutual support and how critical it is that we know about ourselves and our own strengths and limitations in the moment, and also our colleagues. We understand role definition and we have role clarity, things like that. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to scoot through this because you all know that. Let's see, communication. We've talked about some of these remember, we're getting right down to the nitty gritty, and we've talked about some of these tools in a variety of places. So SBAR, and now often we refer to it as ISBAR because the I at the beginning is introduce yourself. You always begin the call by saying, hi, I'm Sue, I'm calling from wherever. And an example of an SBAR report. SBAR is important not only because it is a framework that enables nurses not only to gather their thoughts and make sure they have the right information, but to come to that critical point of the R, which is the recommendation or the request. And that elevates our thinking, not just to be the receiver of orders or information or next steps, but to be the person who has analyzed the information that they are passing along and has a recommendation. So important. It's also important that we all use the same structure for communication. Call out, so critical to use a call process because all members of the team, when we use a call out process, are engaged in the same way in sort of hearing what is happening, listening to what is happening, and ensuring there is follow through. And so here's a really good example. You'll see a leader says airway status. The resident, who's a type of physician in training, says airway clear. Leader says breath sounds. Resident says breath sounds decreased on right. Leader says blood pressure, and the nurse responds blood pressure is 96 on 62. So there is that consistent call out response. So important and brings clarity. Okay, really critical. The other thing is checkback. Checkback again comes back to the patient safety agenda. So when somebody is initiating that message, they need to not only hear the response, but acknowledge the response. And that means every member of the team knows that follow through to the initial request has been, is accurate. This happens in a situation, typically in a situation that's a higher acuity situation. So for example, they give us here, where the doctor is requesting give 25 milligrams of IV Benadryl push. The nurse then doesn't just give it silently. The requirement in the callback, excuse me, is for the nurse to then make clear 25 milligrams of Benadryl IV push, right? So she's checking back, doctor says correct. So we've got this callback and then it's given, okay? So there is that absolute clarity. Did I hear that correctly? It's always the callback. Have I heard that correctly? And then we can move forward. Handoff. Now we talk about this really as transfer of accountability. So important that transfer of accountability in this document, they use the word responsibility, happens not only from RN to RN, it can happen from RPN to RN, it can happen from nurse practitioner to RN or physician's assistants. Now we have a growing body of physician's assistants from physicians to nurses, from a variety of people. So handoff is critical. And in this document, I'm going to let you read it, but they use a really great, gosh, I've forgotten that word, that is sort of a mnemonic, took me a minute, that's called I Pass the Baton, which stands for introduction, introduce yourself, talk about the patient, the assessment, the situation, safety concerns. I pass. The is a freebie. Take a breath here, and we've got baton, background, actions, timing, ownership. So who is responsible? Critical inclusion here. And then next, what's going to happen next? So really fantastic. And I'm going to, again, encourage you to go right to that website and look each one of these up. So if you click on that, I pass the baton, they'll give you a video with examples. They have lots of examples. You can read more about team leaders, and I'm not going to read it to you because it's right here for you. So this is a summary, just as if I would make PowerPoint for you and talk about them. I'm going to get you to read them and go to the website and look at that in greater detail. They talk about team events and the kinds of things that can really be helpful. So first of all, sharing the plan, and they want you to be to have a brief, right? So a short session prior to the start or the sharing of a plan. Monitoring or modifying a plan, they talk about that huddle, and I know many of you are doing huddles at work. And then reviewing the team's performance, that's the debrief. So we have the brief ahead of time, we have the huddle that keeps us updated, and then we have the debrief. And here is, remember I told you that in the Teamstepps, we really get down to the nitty gritty of tools. Here's a checklist and making sure that we have just the basics well in hand. Who's on the team? Do all the members understand and agree upon the goals that are happening here? Are the roles and responsibilities understood? We've talked about that in our course. What's the plan of care? And you can go through that. And then the debrief checklist. Was situation awareness maintained? Remember, I just talked about that. It's so critical that we're always maintaining awareness of what's happening. Were roles and responsibilities understood? Was communication clear? And we do this after the fact as part of the debrief, because every time we go through a situation, we learn from it. And our goal is always to do things better. All right, here we go. And here is a much more elaborated summary of situation monitoring, where we have that situational awareness, and we have that shared mental model or our team vision of what we're looking for in terms of our outcome, and that situation monitoring that becomes that individual skill. Okay, and again, I'm going to let you read it here. We also have a tool for monitoring situations that is really critical. Lovely tool called STEP. And this helps us with understanding how situation monitoring can be brought into every situation. So STEP is status of the patient, the team members who are involved, the environment, and how are we progressing towards our goal. Okay, and here you're going to see all kinds of examples of what would be included in the status of the patient, the team, and the factors that are affecting the team member, not just who are the team members, but what kinds of factors could be affecting them. I know many of you are working double shifts these days from our bridgers. Many of our collaborative students have so much on the go, and you have many more responsibilities. I know for me, one of the things that I've been dealing with a lot is having working and having family often at home, kids learning from home and other things. My mom has come to live with me, which is a real joy, but also some responsibilities. So it's the balancing of everything. So what does that mean when someone goes to work? We don't just drop the rest of our life when we arrive at work, right? If I'm tired on the way to work, I'm probably tired still when I get to work. So understanding what our team members are experiencing, the environment, and then how are we progressing towards our goal. Cross monitoring is really important. So it's not only self-monitoring, it's also monitoring others. It is essential. And don't think of it as I'm spying on others. Think of it as I'm watching their back. I've got your back. So I'm not, if I see something, my job is to look at the environment, including the other team members, and to not let something happen that shouldn't happen. And that's not a way of spying on you or checking up on you. That's a way of protecting the entire team. And this is a really great self-assessment checklist for situation monitoring. It's the I'm safe list. And this really says, am I safe to be here? Am I safe to be here? So look at the things we're checking out. Illness. How many people have gone in sick? I remember in 2000, the New Year's Eve, where it was turning from 1999 to 2000, which was huge. It was a terrible, terrible, terrible flu year. And nurses were working with fevers of old-fashioned terms, 104. So fevers of over 40, or 41. They were sick and there was no one to replace them, and they kept working. So first of all, not safe for them, not safe for other patients. It is remarkable that we got through it. I think with COVID, you look at the level of fatigue, right? And that's another category. Medication, am I taking any medication that could be impacting my judgment? Stress. How much stress am I experiencing? Alcohol or drugs, absolutely. That self-monitoring. Fatigue. Am I too tired to work? Not just to physically show up. Am I too tired to think in a critical way to be able to take care of my patients? Eating and elimination. Right? I remember working some 12-hour shifts where I would go to the bathroom maybe one time, or it'd be 5 o'clock and I'd realize I haven't gone to the bathroom since I got here at 7 o'clock, but that's maybe not a surprise because I haven't had anything to drink. Maybe a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. It's been that catastrophic. So not safe, not healthy. We have to find ways to do it better. But that's a checklist for yourself, the I'm safe checklist. What I love about Teamstepps is that it's so practical for the real world. All right, let's move on. Mutual support. So this is where we, again, we don't just look at ourselves, we look at other people. Oh, I've got a good assignment today. She's got a crappy assignment. Too bad for her. I get those sometimes. No, we protect each other from having those situations. So we make sure that we share the load effectively, right? And we make sure that when someone's asking for help, we fulfill that request, all right? And so we create this environment where when people are expected to ask for help and we are expected to provide that help. Critical to how teams function together. When we give feedback, important that we understand how feedback should be given. And we all know this, we've learned this in a variety of places, but that it should be timely. It's not helpful to say, oh, a week later, oh, by the way, I didn't like that. Respectful, focus on the behaviors and not the person. Specific, exactly what was the issue, directed. So how do we make it better? Not just sit in the, I'm not happy with this, and considerate. People have feelings, people are living through a lot. We've got advocacy and assertion, and I'm gonna just move along here to say the 2-challenge rule, the last 2 things I want to talk about. The 2-challenge rule is that all team members are expected to stop the line, right? If you think something is an essential safety breach, your job is to stop the line. And you have to voice your concern at least 2 times. It's your job, right? It's your job. Voice your concern at least 2 times. And that includes saying something like, and we'll talk about, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't understand why we would be doing that. Something that stops it. And it's important that other team members know they must recognize when a concern has been raised. They must recognize when a concern has been raised. And if you have a concern, it's been acknowledged but not addressed, and that action is going to carry through. You could take a stronger course of action. You could utilize a supervisor, a chain of command, some other way. It doesn't mean that because you've raised your concern twice and they've responded, no, I want to go ahead and do this, you just let it happen, right? So then you've raised it twice directly. Still you are concerned, still you have not received a response that enables you to believe this is not an unsafe situation. You move forward with a stronger course of action. So the 2-challenge rule. And then you use your cuss statements. I am concerned. I am uncomfortable. This is a safety issue. Those are direct and they ring a bell in everyone's head. I'm concerned. I am uncomfortable. This is a safety issue. And that's all about stopping the line. All right, we've got some tools at the end, some observation tools and other things. All of it well developed, well done, and really one of my favorite practical handy guides, and so proud. I am so proud to see that Canada has developed a guide that really helps us to move to a much stronger place in terms of how we are working very practically in interprofessional care. Thanks so much, you guys.